I don't believe that the average American is a racist, but I do believe that the average American is woefully undereducated about the history of race in the United States. Enslaved persons were first brought over here from Africa in 1619, and slavery was not abolished until 1865. That's 249 years of slavery. That was followed by another 100 years of institutionalized violence against black people. Because even though at the end of the Civil War, every formerly enslaved black family of 4 in the United States was promised 40 acres and a mule. In most cases, that acreage was not given, and even in cases where it was given, most of the time, it was then taken back. What followed was the passage of what were called the Black Code Laws throughout the South, which ensured subpar economic, political, and social opportunity for black people. We need to recognize this was another 100 years of institutionalized violence. This was domestic terrorism. What do you call lynchings if not domestic terror? What do you call Ku Klux Klan if not domestic terrorists? What do you call segregation if not domestic terror? You put all this together, you're talking about 350 years of institutionalized violence against black people. That is longer than the United States has been in existence. We also have, as I stress, I cannot stress enough, we need an integrative politics. We need a politics that definitely has a more of a 21st century orientation where we understand it's people we're talking about. There are dimensions of the psyche, dimensions of the heart, so that a concept like historical trauma is meaningful when you're talking about an infliction of that kind of violence against people generation after generation after generation for 350 years. Now, it took 100 years from the end of the Civil War until the Civil Rights Movement, Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement, so that in 1965, the Civil War was over in 1865. In 1964, we passed the Civil Rights Act, which dismantled segregation. In 1965, we passed the Voting Rights Act, which ensured that black people could vote freely, although that's been chipped away at since 2013. The piece that we have not yet fundamentally addressed is the issue of economic restitution. Now, the issue of reparations should not be considered some fringe concept, because it's not. In 1988, Ronald Reagan signed the American Civil Liberties Act, whereby every surviving prisoner from the Japanese internment camps during World War II were given between $20,000 and $22,000. And Germany has paid $89 billion to Jewish organizations since World War II as reparations after the Holocaust. So I propose a reparations council to be made of black scholars, black leaders from across the spectrum of black culture in America today. There are scholars on this subject such as Sandy Darity, Professor Sandy Darity at Duke University, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and others. I propose an expenditure of $200 to $500 billion. Now, I remind you, we spent $750 billion in 1 year on our military, and that's probably hundreds of billion dollars more than our actual legitimate security needs, because so much is based more on short-term profits for defense contractors than what our military has actually asked for. I'm suggesting $200 to $500 billion to be dispersed over a period of 20 years. And the stipulation on the part of the U.S. government would be that that money is to be used for purposes of economic and educational renewal. So it would be up to this council to determine the projects and so forth, by which this money would be dispersed for purposes of educational economic renewal. I'd like to point out that the reason reparations is different and more than quote-unquote race-based policies is because race-based policies leaves open the question of whose fault it is that this gap even exists. Reparations carries moral force in that there is an inherent mea culpa. There is an inherent acknowledgement of a wrong that has been done, a debt that is owed, and a debt now willing to be paid, and a nation now willing to pay it.